So I have mounted my trunk, and what this is when I first bought my motorcycle, no one made a trunk for it. It wasn't for like another year or so after this motorcycle was built before they started coming out with trunks. So I made mine out of a Harley bag, even though mine's an Indian. So I bought a rack, big, giant, thick, sturdy rack, solid metal, and then I mounted this trunk to it. And then on top of that, I mounted a rack. And for a while, I was just carrying emergency supplies. So I carry 2 liters of gas. I carry 1 extra bottle of oil. Then I carry cleaner. And down here, I have 2 bottles of STP booster in case you get into an area where they have just regular gas, bad gas. This bike takes premium, so I'll throw some booster in it if I get stuck having to put regular in the bike. And then here on top is a very lightweight plastic box, and I use this plastic box to put my hats in. So some of you know I make hats, but I tend to buy a hat while I'm out. So basically it's just a big empty plastic hat box, and I just put a loop through the lock. And so far it's done fine. It's held up thousands of miles, and just looks like I'm a pizza delivery guy. And if anything, it just lets people leave me alone more often, because I feel like I'm a spectacle as it is. So so they don't really mess with my bike. I've never had anything stolen off of it yet. Hopefully I never will. Hopefully this isn't the trip and I just jinxed it. Anyway, so I typically put a couple of hats in there and carry those in. Or I'll bring one hat, buy a hat while I'm out if I see something interesting. So now I'm going to pack that trunk, and that trunk has a special way to open it. So actually, even if somebody thought it was open and they were going to try to steal something from it, they wouldn't be able to get it open. I have a special kind of lock for it. So I'm going to have to unlock it, and then I'll show you. I'm going to put a leather jacket and chaps in there, even though it's hot and it's 100 degrees out. Sometimes, if you're riding a motorcycle, you will find out 50 degrees is freezing cold when you're coming from 100 degrees. And you end up someplace like in Colorado or something where the temperature drops in a mountain, then you really need something. So we always carry a leather jacket and chaps all the time. And I know it takes up space, but I'm not staying just in hot areas. I'm going through mountain passes. So I will do this and get back to you. All right, so the first thing I'll tell you about going on trips is that getting motorcycle parts is sometimes hard when you're traveling. So I've been warned that the clutch cable goes on my bike occasionally, and actually a lot of people have worn out by now. I've got 75,000 on this bike. So I carry an extra clutch cable, and I just strapped it to the roof of this trunk. I've been carrying it around for like 6 years, so I haven't needed it. I hope I don't need it, but I have it with me if I do need it. So some simple things I can replace. And then in the trunk, so these are my chaps. So I'll put the chaps in there as flat as I can get them. Underneath the chaps, I have a waterproof bag that can strap down to the top of the bike or someplace else on the bike. If for some reason I have to buy something, get something, I have a waterproof bag I can strap something down to, or a gift or something at the end. This is a 10-liter Summit bag for water. And every once in a while, you do need to fill up with water, and this will carry 10 liters for me. So sometimes I'll just hang it off the back of the bike with 10 liters of water on it. And usually I use it for clothing and stuff. Like I have clothing. I have like this jacket that you soak in water, and then these puff up with gel, and it keeps you cold while you're riding. So things like that are things you might need water for. If we get out somewhere that it gets harder to get water, then I'll fill that up. But generally I use that when I'm camping or something, but it's for emergencies. And then in the bottom, the important thing is to put newspaper down as a liner. And a couple of things, newspaper will keep stuff dry in there if anything happens and water gets in there. It usually does not. That's not the problem. You get water in your shoes, you get water in your boots, your gloves, jacket. You can stuff it with newspaper, but you need to have newspaper with you. And if you stuff it with newspaper, it will dry out really fast, usually overnight. So I keep a liner in there for newspaper. You'd be surprised how hard it is to find newspaper on the road these days. 7-Elevens used to carry it, just in a machine outside. I haven't seen a machine in years. I don't know, it gets hard now to get them. Supermarkets are about the only place I can pick them up now. So anyway, so that's what that's for. Then I'm going to shove in, I have a Perfecto jacket. This is about 40 years old or so. It's around 1980. So this is a Perfecto jacket that I bought vintage. And Perfecto is like Marlon Brando's jacket. And it's amazing. For people who haven't ever tried a Perfecto jacket, there's, other than it being kind of short in the back, which I don't like as much, I see why it is short in the back, but most people, that's the only thing that I would say isn't the most perfect thing. Everything else is amazing about this jacket. Anyway, it does not have elbow arm or anything like that, but it has very thick leather. So I'm going to throw this in there and hope it doesn't take up too much space so I can get other stuff in there, because I still have to get a few other items that I usually sit on top so that they'll be in this cavern when I close it. So, because I'll have clothes and stuff in another bag, but electronics will basically go in here now. So anything that I'm taking with me that's extra will go in the top here. So I'll get to that part later, but this is the part I'm doing now. Okay, so basically this is what this looks like fully loaded now, before I start putting the last extra things in. So I've got some room that I can push things down, and I can still put electronics. And I have cold gear, things that get wet that you have to wear when you're riding in like 110 degrees. And so I'll have a pouch that goes there that I will keep ready. Actually, I have it almost ready, but as I'm packing stuff up, so this will go like this, and then it'll be able to close and seal. And then I will have other stuff, some electronics. If I decide to take a camera or anything, it's going to go in here. So I'll have just enough space to get that stuff in. And then I'll have a round roll that will be my clothes. So I'm going to talk about cold gear, things that you need when it's really hot. I've been in temperatures up to, the highest we could measure was 118 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's pretty hot. And you would die without having some kind of cooling gear or something to keep you cold. And it'll tend to drop your body temperature somewhere between 10 and 20 degrees, depending on what it is. Let me explain to you, because I've bought everything in the whole world for cold gear. There's basically two primary things out there. One is Hypercool. You will see Hypercool on everything, Hyperkool or something like that. Hypercool, and that's a type of material, and they make a product too. That's what this material is. It's kind of like a thick quilt, and basically the whole premise is that there's a little bit of silicone or something in there, and it absorbs some water, and so it stays cold usually about an hour and a half or so. And so you can use it for the whole material, and then you have to have it evaporate. So the whole point is evaporation. That's what cools you off. So I can't use ice packs and things that you need. I'm out there for 8 hours, 9 hours, and we're doing days on end. Sure, I could freeze something for the night hotel or something, but this works really well without freezing it. This one's actually one of the best ones that I've ever bought. I have a lot of the Hypercool stuff. They're usually pretty loose fitting. Even when you buy the other size that you need and try to get it tight, it doesn't really sit perfect. This one actually hugs my body. A lot of this stuff is also made in Chinese sizes. So I'm not a Chinese size. I'm usually an extra large in American. So I'm in a 2X or a 3X in Chinese sizes. So I have to be really careful about the sizes I buy. Anyway, so this Hypercool material is basically a quilt that keeps water in, and it'll last an hour and a half, 2 hours, depending on how hot it is outside. And then you just put this back in your helmet, pour a bottle of water in from cold water from a store or something like that. And basically any of these work that way. You basically just pour a bowl of water on them, you wait for it to absorb it, and then you start all over again. The thing about this one is that this material is a little bit heavy when it's wet. It also feels kind of a little bit slimy when it's wet, but then it dries off, and then it just dries completely fine. Same story with these. Now, these are the ones I like the most. So these have crystals in them. You've probably seen some of the cooling gear that you can buy for guys who are working in the street and things like that. For other workers, they have this cooling gear. So I have hats. The big deal you're looking for is in the edges here. Do you feel a little bit of sand? If it feels like sand or a little bit of rock, then those absorb water and they expand, kind of like those kids' gel toys and stuff where you put them in the water and they expand. And they do feel a little bit slimy at first when you do it, and the more you wear it, the less slimy it feels, but it does start to degenerate after time and it won't hold it for forever. So occasionally when I see these things, they're not around for long, so I'll buy like 10 of them. So I'll always have one, and so I have tons of these. And same thing here, like this particular brand is pretty good. So basically this brand, I have taken like their neck straps. These are meant to be tied around your neck so you can work in the street or something. And I've put snaps on them so I can wrap them around my wrists also. So basically I wrap it around the wrist, and I get cooling coming from the wrists from blood flow and around the neck from blood flow. So I'll do the cooling bands at the wrist. You can also buy these. These are more like those little jelly balls. The balls that you put in a cup and you fill it with water. They absorb it, and the kids used to swallow them and die from them and stuff like that. So basically you don't want to let anybody, I think they even stopped giving them out or doing anything, but they basically have little tiny balls in them that fill up like little Jello. And so I'll keep a couple of those. But then I also have a hat. I have a couple of extra hats. So basically this is the same premise. So I'm looking for a gritty, sandy feel in these. When you wet them, they expand and they absorb, and they'll hold a lot of water, and they'll do good for about 2 hours. So you just basically put all this in your helmet, pour a cold bottle of water on it. I do try to keep, like if I'm carrying something that I need to keep cold, I keep a little ice pack in the same pack. So this is a waterproof sack. And then I have like do-rags and stuff like that, and another neck wrap. I almost always carry 2 of everything for everything I'm carrying. So if I have 2 armbands, neck band, 2 neck bands, 2 hats. So I'm kind of a 2-person. Every time I have something, in case something happens, one gets lost, gets torn, something happens to it, I don't want to be shorted. So I'll have 2 of them. And occasionally I have to give one to somebody else so that they don't die of heat, because they are always like, hey, wear this and you will cool off. And they would say, I'd rather die than wear those things and look like a geek while I'm on the road. And eventually you figure out you're in the desert and there's no people out there. There's just the 2 or 3 of us guys. And eventually you'll be like, hey, I'll wear this so that I can live and feel comfortable, rather than being in Utah at 108 degrees and dying from the heat. So yes, so I know it looks kind of silly when you put one of these hats on, but comfort. I'm all about comfort at this point. I don't give a crap how I look. I'm going to try to look cool is what I'm going to do. So these are the best things I have. These are kind of hard to get a hold of these days. My favorite jacket is this one. These little things fill up with water, and they have them on the front and the back. And it's cool enough, even though there's not a lot of these on here. And I wish I could tell you to get this. Whatever Chinese company made these discontinued them, and they never make them anymore. So I bought 2 of these, and I don't have any more. So this is the last one that I have. Now there's another company. You'll see these too. This company makes this. It's the same basic principle, except that it's an orange vest that you use for like in the street. And the same thing happens as it dries out. It becomes completely light and paper thin. But then these little seeds are in here, and if they absorb water, then they puff up like this. So then you get something full of water, and that will help when it evaporates. This is the newest jacket I got. It's named Peak Safety, and maybe you can find this because I did find it on the Peak Safety site, and it took a little while to get here. And so this one's freshly filled up, brand new, and so it has a better look to it, and has more of these pockets. So this is what it looks like. And then I would have liked some more pockets on here, but they did this giant expando thing for, I guess, different size people, and it's pretty big on me, even though it's a size, I think it's a 2X. It's pretty big on me. On the back, you'll see there's also a whole set of these. So there's enough to really keep you cold when you're riding. or working outside, or, you know, sitting outside in the hot heat, or going to the beach. I mean, you might look ridiculous having this old thing, orange thing on at the beach, but you'll be cool, for sure. You won't look cool, but you'll be cool. So that really helps. So those are the main things. I would tell you there's one other thing. Again, it may be discontinued. I haven't seen it in years. Frog Tog used to make these things called the chili bean pads. This is as hard as a rock when it's dry. But when it's wet, it's just like a regular cloth. So I probably bought 10 of these when they came out. And they made all kinds of stuff. They made a hat. They made a headband. So I have a headband on. So basically they had a headband. And this is like absorbent. You'll see some of these kind of almost similar things at the Walmart that's called Absorball or something like that. And basically you get it wet and it really holds the water and it stays cool. And so this is called a chili pad. So if you see chili pad from Frog Tog, that really matters. The hats, you can't get these hats anymore. So I've been hunting them down, but I will show you a hat. And so it's hard when you first get it, so it's hard as a rock. But this whole thing is absorbent and it fills up with water and it stays that way for like 2 hours. And so, again, not the most attractive looking hat in the world, but it's not the worst. And this whole thing stays completely wet when it's on your head. Whereas the ones with the seeds on them, there are two kinds of these. Like, for instance, there's one that is flat in the top. This one, you can see the material is see-through. And then it just only has these absorbent seeds around the outside edge, so it'll get wet. But there are these old ones. You can't get these anymore, but if you find them, keep them. They're called Misties. And so they have an edge, and so it just fits like a regular cap. But in the top of the cap, it also has them. So when it fills up, you have a top of the head is wet and the sides are wet. So I prefer these, but if you're wearing a tight helmet or something, then clearly the clear one, the one that's flat, is going to be better for the helmet that you're wearing. So I guess it really just depends on what you want. But if I was going to work outside, this is the one I want. I want this one with the puffy hat. So basically that's it. And so I'm going to basically put all that compressed into this one little bag. And it dries out pretty quick, so if you had to, you can just hang it outside for 2 hours, and then it'll compress down to nothing again. And these will all be flat again if the sun is on them in 2 hours. It'll be just like this, which is, like I said, a paper-thin material. And then I can just fold this up, and it takes up no space. So that's what you do if it's really hot. That's my options.